Risk acceptance is a decision to accept risk instead of eliminating, avoiding, or mitigating it. Accepting the recognized risk without taking any mitigation measures usually means that the risk is within the risk tolerance level of the organization. When accepting risk, your organization should be prepared to live with the consequences. When studying the concept of risk acceptance, two concepts need to be defined: tolerability and acceptability. Tolerability refers to the willingness to live with risk to ensure certain benefits so long that it will be adequately controlled. In this sense, tolerating a risk means that we do not consider it insignificant or something that we could or should ignore, but rather something that we should keep under review and reduce further if we can. Acceptability, on the other hand, means that for the business values and missions as they stand, we are prepared to take and accept the risk as is. Risks are accepted in the following scenarios. 1. Risks that have minimal impact and don't justify a full-blown mitigation effort, or risks for which insurance and due diligence are enough. These usually fall under the acceptable category. 2. When risks are set to be mitigated, but where mitigation cannot be performed instantly, risks are accepted for limited periods during which mitigation is undertaken. These usually fall under the tolerable category. Risk acceptance versus risk avoidance. Risk avoidance is a risk approach where mitigation or elimination of the risk is too costly or overwhelming, but the risk is too severe to be accepted. In a case like this, organizations will take the necessary steps to avoid the likelihood of the risk occurring at all. A simple example of this would be if an organization avoids opening a branch in a war zone due to the significant risks involved. Avoidance has the disadvantage of losing out on opportunities that can be gained by engaging in the activities that impose the risk. In some cases, however, this is the best business choice. Risk acceptance is on the opposite side of the risk management spectrum. With risk acceptance, organizations will continue to operate despite the inherent risks. As we mentioned earlier, accepted risks are usually within the risk appetite and tolerance level of the business, at least for the short term. 4 ways to handle risk. Risk management strategies generally use these common practices to deal with risks of various severities. Avoid the risk by eliminating any vulnerable activities. Mitigate the risk by implementing security controls. Transfer the risk to an external party, for example, insurance. Or accept the risk. Critical and high risk factors should rarely be accepted and are usually not well suited to avoidance or transfer without significant changes to your business operations. That leaves mitigation as the most likely choice for high severity risks. What are residual risks? Residual risk is the risk that remains even after mitigation and controls have been implemented. When it comes to risk management, at some point the question of when do we stop is going to be asked. Risk can never be fully eliminated, and residual risk will always be present. The point at which we stop mitigation efforts is defined by a risk acceptance threshold, and what is known as residual risk is the risk that remains after having introduced the relevant measures. Are residual risks always accepted? No, residual risks are not always accepted risks. After identifying a risk mitigation plan, the residual risks are recalculated. The objective of introducing a mitigation control is to eliminate or reduce identified risks. If the residual risks are acceptable due to the mitigating controls, then the residual risk is called an acceptable risk. If the risk is still above the threshold, a reassessment of the problem is warranted, and the exploration of new ideas to lower the risk is necessary. On the Centraleyes platform, your organization can easily build a risk register and prioritize risks according to your risk exposure. You can click on a given risk, see what it is comprised of, and simply press the Accept button for any risk factor that you wish to tolerate or accept. Once the risk is accepted, its impact is excluded from the asset, group, and risk score calculations. Want to see it in action? Go to centraleyes.com.